All right, we're going to talk a little Florida State football with Max Chadwick of Pro Football Focus. He is their college football analyst, and he also hosts the podcast for college football. Check it out. It is Pro Football Focus. It's College Football Pod. Max, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me on again, man.
Thank you very much. It is the time of year that we both love. We're getting ready to start. It's week 0. We have several things to talk about with the Noles and Georgia Tech. It's obviously the best game this weekend. I don't think that's really in debate. So I'm just going to ask a few basic questions. And my first one, I don't even have to look at my sheet. What do you think of the transfers that Georgia Tech got, especially on defense? You want to talk offense too, that's fine. Do Noles fans need to think about any particular player for Georgia Tech that transferred in? If so, who might that be?
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys that I would say are probably going to be starters for Georgia Tech that are transfers coming in defensively. I think Romello Height is one of them, the edge rusher coming in from USC. And the other one I would say is probably Warren Burrell, the corner coming in from Tennessee. So I think they brought in a lot of other transfers, obviously, that are going to be playing probably a good amount as kind of rotational pieces. But as for the starting 11 on Saturday, I would expect Romello Height and Warren Burrell to be the two guys transferring in from Georgia Tech that should be starting, at least for the Yellow Jackets.
I thought it was interesting. Height, I mean, he had like 4 sacks at Southern Cal. That was the first guy I went to as well. The other kid that I'm kind of interested in, he's a Florida kid, so I'm familiar with him, Zachary Tobe. I've seen him play. He was at Illinois. He had 5 pass breakups, so he's a long kid. He might get some reps, and he's on there 2 deep. So that's an interesting player. But Georgia Tech, like up front, I think Height's important because, like, as you know, they struggled last year up front. So,
yes.
All right. I'm being kind. They gave up 221 yards rushing a game. It's bad. Yeah. I think, based this first real big question, I think Georgia Tech's going to play soft because Florida State's got a lot of speed at receiver. Do you think they could play a lot of cover 3, cover 4, and get away with it on the back end? Obviously, that helps eliminate deep passes, but not just get completely gouged in the run game by the Florida State Seminoles? Because that's my question. Because if they can't, I don't think they can man up and just put 7 in the. I just don't think they can do that. If I'm wrong,
I don't think so either. Yeah, I think honestly the problem is, like, when we actually did our preview on the PFF show yesterday, and my matchup I was talking about was the Florida State O-line and that run game against this D-line, because you mentioned it before. I mean, last year Georgia Tech allowed the second most yards per carry and the second most yards before contact per carry among Power 5 schools last year. So that is like that's like basically, I think what the stat was, it was like 2.5 yards per attempt they were letting up before even touching the ball carrier. So it's like, man, they were getting pushed. Yeah, they were getting pushed around last year, and hopefully they get a little bit better this year for their sake. And the problem is, I love Florida State's offensive line. I rank them as having a top 10 O-line in the country. Guys like they have guys like the left tackle I really like. I like the Maurice Smith. Yeah, Maurice Smith at center. Jeremiah Byers at right tackle. I'm worried about them. And also, I mentioned before how they create push for contact, and they really got pushed around. Lawrence Toafili and Roydell Williams are guys that really do well after contact, right? So even when you get a hat on them, they're still going to be able to churn out 4 yards. I believe Toafili last year averaged 4 yards after contact per carry, and Roydell Williams around 3 yards after contact per carry, which is both very, very good numbers. So I think that Florida's trying to impose their will in the run game in this game. I obviously, everyone's excited to see TJ and how he does as a new quarterback for them, but I really think this game on both sides of the ball is all about the run game for each team. And I think that's the way for Florida State to win, is to really impose their will in the run game.
That is pretty much what I thought you were going to say, and it's why I led with this next question. Assuming that it doesn't go quote unquote great for Georgia Tech's rushing defense, do they need to be at least +2 in turnovers to get a W?
Yeah, I think probably, and I think that's a big thing too, because Haynes King last year really struggled with turnovers. I believe he had maybe the most interceptions in the country, or very close to it. I think he had 16 total last year, right? So he's a guy that is sometimes a little careless with football. Now, he is electric, right? He is a guy that I think Florida State needs to account for in the run game a lot, especially with Jamal Haynes, a really good running back they have too. But he's got to be more careful with the football. If Georgia Tech loses the turnover battle in this game, they're going to lose this game. I don't think there's any way for them to win this game without winning the turnover battle, or at least tying the turnover battle. So I think Georgia Tech might need to have a couple breaks go their way in this game. But I also think that Georgia Tech is better than some people might think too. I think that rushing attack they have on offense is really dangerous, and I think especially Florida State last year, we saw they were vulnerable against mobile quarterbacks a lot last year as well, especially option quarterbacks. So I think that's a way that Georgia Tech can expose them a little bit, because I think they run that option very, very well, and that is a way for them to exploit Florida State's defense a little bit.
I agree. And early on in the season, there's always teams that have hiccups on offense and defense. You're going to give up if a run gap fit is wrong, whatever. Florida State, I think, gave up about 200 yards last year against Syracuse. That's one of those things where you can do that, but if you play well in the red zone, you can get away with it, etc. But that brings up the next point. Last year, Florida State was a top 10 team overall in special teams. People don't talk enough about it, especially early in the year. Obviously, you don't want to punt block or anything like that. I don't know much about Georgia Tech special teams. Florida State might have the best combo kicker punter in the nation. And Mastromano and Fitzgerald, he was 19 out of 21 kicking field goals, and Mastromano is preseason first-team All-American by some different people. He only had one game. He averaged less than 40 yards a punt last year. That's ridiculous. So what does Georgia Tech have, and can they at least make it close in the special teams game?
I think they can. I don't think it's anything special, ironically. I think guy like a Christian Leary at kick returner is a guy that I like a little bit. He's got a little speed back there. I think he could be a dangerous player that can create some advantage, situations for them off the kick return. Rodney Shelley's probably going to be their punt returner this year. We'll see if Jamal Haynes is back there as a kick returner as well. He's a guy who's really, really exciting as well. So nothing special, nothing crazy. But I think that there's a couple guys that I think are at least someone you should account for. Like Jamal Haynes especially, he's a dangerous player with the ball in his hands. And if he's back there as a kick returner for Georgia Tech, he's a guy that's tough to bring down as both a running back and returner. So, again, nothing crazy. And I don't think it'll really swing the outcome of this game. But I do think there's a couple guys to look out for on that end.
I'm curious about Jamal as well. He's really good. For people that don't know, he was a former receiver. They moved to running back, and it clicked. Not the biggest guy in the world, but the first guy. Good luck. He's going to make you miss. He's like 185 pounds, but he's really twitchy. Next, what does Georgia Tech need to do to score at least 30 points on what, at least I think, will be a really good Florida State defense? Again, they've recruited well, and obviously they got a bunch of transfers too. Anything particular besides the obvious? All well, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what they got to do is just win the run game first, and then have Florida State commit more guys to the box, and then take your shots over the top to Eric Singleton when they're there. I think Eric Singleton's a really good receiver as well. He had a great year last year as a freshman, and I think he's a guy that's going to have a breakout year as a sophomore this year. So Florida State's secondary, as much as they lost to the draft on defense, it's still really good. I mean, Zaire Thomas is a great player. Fentrell Cypress is a great player. Their safeties are really good as well. If you make them play one-on-one and get Singleton one-on-one situations, again, it's tough because, Thomas and Cypress are going to be NFL draft picks next April. But I do think that there's opportunities there. And really, I think the biggest opportunity for Georgia Tech to put up 30 points is just kind of the way that Boston College exposed Florida State a little bit last year with Thomas Castellanos and that run game and all that. That option, man, Florida State really did struggle against the option. Now, when you're running straight up at him, when you're just simply handing the ball off to the running back and running at him, Florida State was one of the best run Ds in the country. It's just straight up, okay, we know who has the ball. But when there's a question of, okay, does the quarterback have the ball or does the running back have the ball? That's when Florida State got into some trouble. I think the linebackers last year, I know a couple of them are gone now, but the linebackers last year struggled moving side to side. I think downhill, they were big hitters and they were great at that. But side to side, they struggled in that option game. That's the key, I think, for Georgia Tech in this game is okay, run that option until your knees are bleeding out there, basically. Because I think Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, they did it a lot last year, and they're going to do it a lot this year. And I think that is a way for them to win this game is through that option run game with the Haynes and Haynes guys back there for Georgia Tech.
That's kind of what I think, too. They're not going to just come out and throw it 45 times.
No.
Marvin Jones, Patrick Payton, Big Darrell Jackson, who I think is as talented a D tackle as are in college football. He's had a weird career, had to sit out last year, but they got some guys I think they're going to give Tech some problems. All right. Can Georgia Tech keep Florida State under 150 yards rushing? That's exactly the number
They,
Florida State averaged last year, by the way. They were down a little bit because they had so many guys banged
yeah,
up.
right. I don't think they will in this game. I mean, they obviously can, but I think again, like Florida State is the same thing where it's just like, and not really the option game. It's more just like, okay, just run right at them. Make them prove that they're going to be a hell of a lot better than what they were last year. Because, like we've mentioned before, last year they were quite frankly one of the worst run defenses that we had in the Power Five, and I don't think they really improved that run D too much in the portal that much. So I think Florida State is going to be predicated on it. And DJ's another guy, too. At Oregon State, he wasn't a guy who was going to drop back 30, 35 times a game and just beat you that way. He was a guy who was going to rely on that run game and then beat you off play action off of that. So I really think that Loris Toafili and Roydell Williams, they're going to have huge games in this one and be critical in this game. So I wouldn't say they're going to go under 150. I think Florida State is going to, again, like I said, try to impose their will and run right down Georgia Tech's throat in this game.
I kind of agree. There's an old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And Georgia Tech didn't prove they didn't fix their own defense, that's for sure. So break them again, I guess is another way to put it. So moving to the Florida State side, you mentioned earlier, people want to see DJU. We both agree that I think they'll go over 150 yards rushing too, just for the record. Mm-hmm. People want to see DJ. They got Malik Benson's a transfer from Bama. They got Jalen, who's a transfer from down there at LSU. They got some speed, like serious speed. Hakeem Williams, got Ja'Kai Douglas. Over under DJU 225 passing yards.
Ooh, good question. I'll go the slight over there. I think they're going to take some shots when Georgia Tech starts playing cover 0, cover 1, just to get guys in the box. Because I think you can't be letting up 6 yards per carry every single play and not commit more guys to the box. And I think Norvell and that coaching staff is smart enough. They're like, okay, when they start bringing them down and the safeties start coming down, then when you have one-on-one matchups with those speedsters, like you said, then let DJ use that arm strength, one of the strongest arms we have in college football. Let him go over the top. So I think there's going to be opportunities there. Off play action for DJ to take some shots downfield. So I'll say he goes over, but like I said, I really do expect Florida State to win this game off the run game. And I think anything more than that will be off play action for DJ. I don't think we see DJ just pure drop back that many times in this game. I think a lot of his pass attempts that he'll have in this game are just going to be off play action, in my opinion.
I think quite a bit of it will too, or a bootleg waggle where it's two guys to read the flat and maybe a guy on a corner route. I think they'll keep it simplistic. To that point, Malik Benson has all but been said he's the number one receiver. I think everybody kind of knows that for the Noles. A lot of people are speculating, will they have a number 2? I've speculated about it as well. So do you think they're just going to spread it around, or do you think like Brown and Benson are going to get the lion's share of the receptions in this game?
I think Benson's a guy. I think Brown's another guy I'm really excited to see out there as well. And then Ja'Kai Douglas, obviously in the slot, will be a fun player to watch too. And then Hakeem Williams, I mean, I'm excited to see what he could do as a former
big guy.
I believe he's a 5-star, right, coming out of high school, or
some people do
right there.
Yeah, top 50 for sure.
I'm excited to see him. Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to see him. I don't think there's a true number 1. At least right now. Malik Benson can prove to be wrong, but there isn't like a Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman type of like alpha receiver out there as of right now. But I would say game 1, I'm expecting them to spread it when they do throw the ball, spread it around a little bit. Even Kyle Morlock at tight end, I like a little bit too. And Toafili out of the backfield is actually a pretty good receiver too. So I'm excited. I think we're going to see a good amount of guys get targets in this game, and not just have one guy take over as the number 1 guy.
I kind of agree, and I'm okay with that. Like Jalen and Lucas and some of these other guys they have that are little quick, twitchy guys, they're not fun to tackle, and that just kind of adds to your rushing attack. Over under, we talked earlier, Haynes King had 16 picks. Over under on picks this game, especially, I was thinking about it if Florida State got ahead, 1.5 for King.
Ooh.
I went back and forth on this myself.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Because I think if they're going to throw the ball a lot, if they're down in this game and they start dropping back, I'll take the over. And I think Cypress and Zaria Thomas in that secondary is good enough that they can get a couple off of him. And King has been inconsistent as a drop back passer, but I'm going to go under only because I think Georgia Tech is going to run the ball as much as humanly possible, and I don't think Haynes King will have enough dropbacks to get to 2 picks. That is close. I think that's a perfect line, honestly. I think because I do expect him to throw one in this game, but I don't think he'll drop back enough in order to throw 2 interceptions. So I'm going to go under for this game.
Okay. To that point, one of the other reasons I brought it up, I know other people have opinions on this, but Georgia Tech's offensive line is pretty talented. They've had a freshman All-American last year. He's allegedly been beaten out based on their depth chart. So the guy that came back, etc. I'm like, okay, well then you guys have improved. But still, Florida State's D-line is talented. Can they consistently keep Haynes King upright when he does drop back and it's an obvious passing situation? That's a major question that I have, and I would lean no personally, but I'm curious as to your take.
Yeah, good question. I think Florida State's D-line probably has the advantage in that situation. Again, and the option is where it gets different because that's when there's confusion out there for Florida State as to who has a football, and then you never know what happens. But just straight dropbacks, I like Pat Payton. He's a projected first rounder for a lot of people. Marvin Jones Jr. was a 5-star recruit a couple years ago. Obviously, injuries and other things have kept him from seeing the field too much. But I'm excited to see what he can finally do as a starter. And I like what Florida State has on the interior too, with Darryl Jackson, like I mentioned before too. So I'll say Florida State has the advantage on that. I think they'll get I think they'll get Haynes King a couple times and sack him. But yeah, I think that's as pure drop back. I'll give the advantage of Florida State in that matchup.
That's kind of where I'm at. If I'm wrong on that, that changes the game a little bit because they need like Leary and some of the guys they have. They got some speed. I mean, they really do. Their receiver corps is pretty darn good. So if you get Haynes time, it may be a little different. Number 5, which Florida State player emerges? Like out of all these transfers, the young guys, I mean, you can pick DJ if you want, but anybody you think that's going to stand out for Florida State in this game?
I think it's the Lawrence Toafili game. I really do. I think this is a game he's going to just emerge as the guy for this game. I don't think they're not going to be able to run the ball like this in every single game, but I think the biggest takeaway after this game will be, okay, yeah, Toafili. We were wondering who would take over after Trey Benson leaves. I think Toafili is going to establish, and Roy Del Williams. I think he and Roy Del Williams are going to get almost an equal share of touches, but I'll give Toafili the star. I think he'll be the MVP of this game for Florida State.
That really wouldn't surprise me. And ironically, that was my next question. Who do you think is going to be the MVP? So you're going with Toafili, and I'd imagine that a lot of people will pick that. I'm going to go a little outside the box, and it's because I think it'll lead to turnovers and good field position. I'm going to go Alex Mastromanno, the punter for Florida State, because while I don't think they're going to struggle to score, but when they keep the other team backed up a lot, they can get 1 or 2 of those turnovers midfield or plus. That sets you up. And again, he's a first team preseason All-American for a reason. First game, special teams can go sideways. I like having the veteran punter. That's always one of my biggest fears. It's like first game that everything just goes sideways with special. That's the easiest way to lose a football game is screw up special teams. That's why coaches harp, and they should. That's why coaches harp on it a lot. All right, here's the freebie time. Anything in particular you want to add about this game open-endedly? Whether it's Georgia Tech, whether it's Florida State coaching, Brent Key's, I believe, second full season for Georgia Tech. Anything you would like to add about the matchup overall?
I don't listen. We actually had a lot of Florida State people comment and be angry with us because we were saying like, yeah, Georgia Tech has a shot in this game. Like this isn't just cakewalk for Florida State out there. I think Georgia Tech really can make this a ball game. And Dalton, my co-host, actually picked Georgia Tech to win. I did not, but I do think. They can keep this game. And I think the only thing I'll say to Florida State fans is do not be surprised if we're in the fourth quarter. This is still one possession game. I think Georgia Tech very much can. They have that option game against Florida State's defense is a real advantage for Georgia Tech, I think. And I think if they can exploit that as much as possible, I think Georgia Tech can maybe pull off the upset. I don't think they're going to do it, but I do think that there are advantages for Georgia Tech in this game. I do not think it'll just be a cakewalk for the Seminoles right now.
I kind of get your point there because not that it's fair, but the way young people look at it, you can tell them whatever you want, but 18 to 22-year-olds are pretty stubborn and they know everything. I'm sure Florida State, as a coaching staff, you already know, like, you guys better take this serious, all that stuff. I'm not going to believe that every guy in the starting lineup is until I see it. You know, if they're up 21 to
Sure.
nothing 2 minutes into the second quarter, okay, you've changed my mind.
Sure.
But you got to prove it to me, because this is a team that, I mean, for a long time, Georgia Tech was a laughingstock. I mean, they were bad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they finally started to turn it around a little, so I give them respect. But so, I mean, if you want to give your shout out on a prediction, that's fine. You don't have to, but you think Florida State's going to win is pretty much what I'm gathering here.
Yeah.
Fire away.
34-24 was my final that I said on the show. So I do think there's a lot of unknowns for Florida State right now because of how much talent they lost to the NFL draft, but I do still think there's a lot of talent still on that team. Your listeners might hate me for saying this. I don't think this is a top 10 team in the country. I think that's a little much for me. But I do think they'll win this game, and I think they'll win by 10 points. But again, I really do think there's a way for Georgia Tech to win this game with how much man coverage Florida State likes to play. If you play man coverage against that option, and those defensive backs are turned around, and those linebackers and how much they struggled against options last year, and you have some new players in that D line, like there is a way for Georgia Tech to exploit that in this game. Now, I do think Florida State almost equally has the advantage in the run game as well on the other side of the ball. So that's why I think Florida State will win the game. But I will just say I do think the Yellow Jackets have a path to upsetting Florida State in this game. I don't think it'll happen. I think Florida State will still take care of business. But I will caution some people thinking, oh, this will just be an easy game for Florida State week 1.
That's kind of where I'm at. The couple of points, and one of them I asked Max a little bit ago. +2 is about where Max and I are in regards to Georgia Tech being ahead in the turnovers. If this is an even game in turnovers, unless one of them is like a pick 6 or something, I just don't think Georgia Tech will score on Florida State's defense as easily as it would be vice versa. Florida State just has more defensive talent. I mean, it's not really that close, especially from a depth perspective. Georgia Tech is better. I'm not debating that. But I think the Noles are in a far better spot.
Agreed.
Prove me wrong on defense. And it's just an accumulation of talent over years. And I tell you what, Max, I could do a whole pod on this and compare with whoever you want. Name a team that mixes recruiting with the transfer portal, not only for talent, but for mixing it and keeping the locker room okay. I've heard some bad stories about other teams. Florida State has figured that out. I don't know how they do it, but I think this year will be another example of that.
Yeah, they do. Mike Norvell does an unbelievable job of just bringing in guys from the portal and bringing guys in recruiting, and just like that locker room just doesn't change no matter what. So the culture there is outstanding at Florida State. I mean, last year's team, every star player you could think of was a transfer, right? Pretty much like Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Jared Verse, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Braden Fisk, list goes on, right? So I think that he does an amazing job. And again, if you're not utilizing the portal in today's day and age of college football, you're losing. And Mike Norvell was able to turn that thing around quickly at Florida State because of the portal, and he did it once again this offseason. I don't think it's as extreme as he's done in the past. Like, he hasn't gotten, I don't think there's true, absolute superstars like a Keon Coleman or Jared Verse that he got in the portal this year. But we shall see. And I think Florida State is still very much in the thick of it for the ACC race this year. I'm just not personally as high on Florida State as I was last year. Like, I had Florida State as the 4th best team in the country entering last year. I think they're more of like a top 20 team right now than anything else, just because I have more questions marks with some of the things they have. But I'm excited to see what they do, man. It's gonna be a fun. It's gonna be an unreal week 0 game. Usually we don't get too many of those. So
yeah, usually it's a directional school, about 4 different games, and it is what it is. So I'm looking forward. All right, again, this is Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Thank you very much for stopping in, brother. Truly appreciate it. Everybody, please hit that like button and that notification bell. I will actually have another podcast tonight, but come back and see us. Thank you very much.